We have the opportunity of having with us Jeffrey Sachs, who is a man of so many hats, and among them is one of the persons that know best and can guide us through the Sustainable Development Agenda. So I'm going to ask him, Jeffrey, what are the three things that leaders and governments have to do to get starting the implementation of the Sustainable Development Agenda?
Thank you very much, and it's great to be with you. And it really is, by the way, very exciting that the global community that is focusing on real things, making progress on sustainable development is absolutely expanding. So here you have world-leading businesses, civil society, and the governments. It's very exciting. So what do we need to do? We need first to take seriously the goals. That's why we're here today and tomorrow, because this is not just from an event last September. These are the world's goals. They're the only goals we're going to have for our generation, by the way. Don't let them slip through your fingers, because it took 3 years to make these goals. We're not going to make that effort again before 2030. It just couldn't happen. So grab them, hold them, make them real. The second thing is what's sometimes a dirty word in my profession, but I think it's a very important word, plan. Because these are not simple things to achieve. Universal health coverage, universal quality education, decarbonization of the energy system. They're achievable, but it's not simply, okay, we're going to do that. This requires strategy. It's going to require 15 years to achieve the SDGs, and it's going to require 2 generations to decarbonize the world's energy system, which is at the essence of what tomorrow is about. Then the third element, you've asked me for 3, I would say invest. Invest, invest, invest. This is about building our future. That's what investment means. It means taking some of our resources and wealth today to build the future that we want. And what kind of investment? First, investment in children. Without question, you could almost stop there, because if we don't invest in young people and their health, their nutrition, their education, their skills, you lose the whole plot. You can't do it without a healthy generation that has the skills and the talents to participate fully. We've got a big challenge there, because there are lots of kids that are growing up in hunger, that don't have access to even basic health, to basic education, but it's crazy because the cost of getting all of that is tiny compared to the huge benefits. What else to invest in? We need to invest in a new energy system. We cannot go on building any more old-fashioned coal-fired power plants. Period, full stop. Because we will wreck the planet. So every new power plant coming online has to be low carbon. If you're going to use coal, and I don't advise it, you have to have carbon capture and sequestration alongside. And if you don't have that, there's no place for you in a well below 2 degrees Celsius world that we agreed we're aiming for in the Paris Climate Agreement. So sustainable energy systems, sustainable infrastructure. I'm a big believer that information technology is really our most remarkable tool of this generation, the apps for sustainable development. So write them, get them onto our phones, get them onto our devices, because that's really our absolute enormously powerful new tool to do things differently. I know I'm enjoying the fact that when I give my class now, it's online for free, and tens of thousands of students around the world can see it for free. But we could have every classroom in the world have access to tens of thousands of books for free, easily with a little bit of planning. We could have anywhere in the world, even if there's no radiologist to read an X-ray, X-rays read anywhere in the world, obviously. We can do things now that were not imaginable even 5 years ago, and these applications keep getting better and better. So we need to write the apps for sustainable development. And that is one of our great new tools that this generation has. Frankly, the younger you are, the better at it you are. So in my generation, we just watch. My daughter constantly comes and says, Dad, you don't even know. This is what you have to do on your phone or on the computer. So please, young people, get out there and do this, because that really is the key. Look at the goals, understand them, work together, and write the kind of code and applications that can make the breakthroughs in your cities, your communities, so that these goals can be achieved.
Super. You gave us 3 words, which are not magic, but which are all words for action: seriousness, planning, and investment. But you also have to tell us how to advance on this agenda that has 17 very, very important and somehow different objectives, the goals, but in a manner which it is integrated. How to do it?
Everybody find 16 friends, okay? And then you can sit around the table, and each of you has one, and you can all, in an integrated way, work on this, but everybody's got a specialty. If you're a government, there is a minister of education, there's a minister of health, there's a minister of infrastructure, and so on. Typically, there's a minister of planning, or there's a prime minister's office that is a coordinating function as well. And so we have to see that in this complex agenda, we have a kind of complex governance that's not normal. One thing that politicians need to understand, no politicians are going to finish this job on their term. They also can't be the blockade to this agenda. Now, in our new politics, politicians have to help further a national and global agenda, not to be the obstacles, not to go off and say, oh, we don't care about that. That's not their job anymore. And they have to understand with the energy system, for example, it will take 40 years, at least, maybe half century, to move to the zero carbon economy which we want, because it takes that long to roll off the old infrastructure and build the new infrastructure. So that means that a politician has to understand they're there to implement. They're not there to wreck a 30 or 40-year strategy. They're not there to just say that's not important. They're there to be part of the history of their country and the history of the world as an agent of responsibility. This doesn't come so easily to every politician, by the way, because they think I got an election next year, I got to do a gimmick. This is past the gimmickry. This is too hard, too serious, too long-term for gimmicks. This is sustained, serious investment in a new kind of economy. But it's possible. We know that when we face the kind of really existential challenge that we face, that's why we have a universal agreement on these goals. Not that they love these goals, the politicians, this is a difficult field, a difficult area for them, but it's too dangerous to say, no, I don't care about this.
Is this the biggest challenge that you see, that we might get started, but we might not be able to figure out how accountability is being, impressed upon the different leaders?
I think we have to take a very sobering reflection. This is not the first time sustainable development was proposed as the centerpiece for the world. 1992 was the first time at the Earth Summit. And at the Earth Summit, 3 marvelous treaties were made. The Framework Convention on Climate Change, the Convention on Biological Diversity, and the Convention to Combat Desertification. And yet, those treaties did not work for the first 20 years. That's why we have sustainable development goals, because at Rio Plus 20, the government said, we've had these 3 great treaties, but we're not implementing any of them. We need to make these the people's goals, not just the diplomats' goals or the lawyers' goals. These are not self-enforcing. We need the public imagination and commitment everywhere. And this is really important for us to understand. We are at risk that this was a photo op last September. We have to take this and make it real, and it's not self-evident that that's going to happen. In fact, it failed once. So this is high stakes for us. This is our generation's chance, but it's also the last chance of the planet to stay below 2 degrees C, much less the target that was agreed in Paris, which is to stay well below 2 degrees C and aim to achieve 1.5 degrees C limit on warming.
So high stakes. I'm going to pass the floor to colleagues here, because I'm sure somebody wants to ask questions to Jeff, not to miss the opportunity of having you here. Yes, sir?
Any questions?
Any questions? Raise your hands. Microphone is going to be passed to you. Meanwhile, you are thinking the question. Let me ask you.
And if you don't have questions, tell us how to succeed.
Yeah. That's right. Comments are well accepted. But meanwhile, colleagues are thinking about a question. I have one. How do we go from an agenda which was north-south to a universal agenda? An agenda where everybody has to implement, because the goals affect every single person, the ones in the rich country, the ones in countries which are less rich.
Absolutely. And I'm working with Mayor de Blasio of New York on the sustainable development for New York City.
Good.
Because we need it. This is a city divided between wealth and poverty. This is a city that needs to get its carbon emissions down. This is a city like any city in the world that still is yet to achieve the sustainable development goals. And that's important. And the city, the mayor's absolutely committed. He has one NYC, that's the Sustainable Development Goal Plan for New York City. And I've been sitting in recent weeks through hearings and discussions how to get carbon emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, down by 80% by 2050. So everyone's thinking now, because we have these new agreements, how to go further, how to go deeper, how to actually get this done. That kind of work needs to take place all over the U.S. SDG 6, water. How about Flint, Michigan? You know, these are goals for everybody. These are not goals about poor countries. Almost no country, I'm thinking of Scandinavia, they're always at the top of the list of high achievers. Even Scandinavia has a little bit of work left to do to decarbonize its energy system. For the rest of us mere mortals around the world, there's still a long way to go to really achieve sustainable development, whether you're in a rich country or a poor country. So this is not a development aid agenda. This is a universal agenda. It happens to include help for the poorest countries, but this is an agenda that's absolutely universal.
The lady has a question.
Hi, my name is Dinaz. I'm from New Jersey, but I'm part of a group called ACE, which is Alliance for Climate Education.
Great.
And we're a group of young people that meet weekly in New York, and we talk about climate change and how we as young people can be influential in the movement. Now, you talked a lot about the, like how we need to be more involved in it, but what tools do you think the government or the private sector or other organizations can give young people to really be a substantial part of this movement?
What I would like your group to do is meet with the utility companies, meet with the commissioner or the responsible official for energy in New Jersey, or NYSERDA in New York, and say to them, look, we're not in your seat yet, but we're going to be. But by the time we're in your seat, either we've wrecked the climate or not, so we want to know, how are we decarbonizing the Northeast of the United States to really get emissions down to near zero? And I think what young people can do, it's a great education, by the way. Go find out what Con Ed is doing, or find out what the power companies in your region are doing. Find out how your electricity is produced right now, and then really go in for the education. How are we going to get this decarbonized? And you know what? If they're honest, they're going to say, we never thought about that really, because they have not really planned yet on how to decarbonize New Jersey, New York, the New England, and so on. And they're thinking about it for the first time. So then say to them, we'd like some young people to be represented in these processes, because actually that's our future also. We're studying hard. We're going to know as much about it as anyone around the table, but we would like a seat at the table. And if you have any problems, just give me a call, okay? Good.
So Jeff, you put her to work. Now, the gentleman in the front row.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you so much. My name is Tom Nasser. I'm representing an organization called Cricket. We're crowd mapping initiatives from organizations and people that have to do with the SDGs here.
Wonderful.
So my question to you is about transparency and anonymity. Do you think those two components come into play at all when it comes to holding organizations or people accountable for, upholding these SDGs?
Well, look, one of the biggest problems in our society is impunity. Impunity means you commit crimes, but you're not held accountable for them. Wall Street committed massive, massive financial fraud during the last 10 years. That's one of the reasons why we had a global financial meltdown and an economic catastrophe. But if you look at some of those banks, like JP Morgan, which paid maybe $25 billion of fines for financial fraud, you'll see the CEO is the same one that was in there the whole time. That's what I call impunity. Where is the responsibility? We don't have that right now. If we don't have responsibility for legal behavior, how are we ever going to have legal behavior? If Wall Street thinks that you can cheat, sell toxic assets, and that's just normal business, how are we ever going to have a functioning economy? So we absolutely need to break through this impunity. And I find it very difficult that there hasn't been accountability of the management of companies that have broken the law. And we are not going to succeed unless we, sometimes called pierce the corporate veil, to hold responsible those who are really responsible. When the Panama Files were released, 11 million files showing what a game we have going on. A game of impunity of powerful people all over the world in business and politics. Well, you can imagine that the people are hiding their money and hiding their ill-gotten gains might not have the SDGs first in mind. So we have to open up this process. This tax haven business, this tax secrecy business is unacceptable. And who creates the tax secrecy? Believe me, it's not the British Virgin Islands, it's not the Cayman Islands, it's the US government and the British government and other powerful organizations that are working with these tax havens, because that's been the way the game has been played up until now. But we're saying no, the game has to stop because survival has to go forward.
Ashworth, the lady here, please.
Yes, I am formerly with the ad business, so having seen and been in the rooms of a lot of the global large corporations, there are two factors, and I'm wondering what your point of view is. Millennials, I think, are the best thing to happen to the world, and the ISAC organization that's connected with the UN, I'm helping work with them, but I'm just wondering, the one thing I know for corporations is that they are having a hard time retaining millennials, and they're also having a difficult time. I think they don't really care necessarily about what we're talking about here today. So what is your thought around people who are, say, rebels who've left, the typical corporate world, who want to help with this initiative, get some of the money that's being spent on advertising to support awareness for this?
Great, thank you very much.
Can I ask you, before you respond, there is another lady that has questions, and since we are running out of time,
sure.
we'll have the two together.
Okay.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Andalib Shah, and I represent TechFugees. We're focused on bringing the technology world and plugging them into solving challenges around the refugee crisis. My question for you is just, I'd love for you to touch on the importance of the technology world. I know you mentioned apps a few times. If you could just elaborate on the importance of why and how the technology world can plug into the SDGs and address various challenges.
Wonderful, thank you very much. You know, I was with a business meeting about an hour and a half ago, and the question was, how should the business community get engaged with the SDGs? And my answer was, look, if you want to survive, you better get engaged, because the world's turning in a new direction. If you don't think you're surviving, our coal industry in the US is bankrupt right now. And for a real reason, that there isn't room in a climate-safe world for coal, except if they were leading with CCS, which they weren't doing, carbon capture and sequestration. If you're on the wrong side of sustainable development, you may be brazen, you may be like the tobacco industry or the oil industry was. We can mess it up, we can confuse everybody, we can sow doubt. No longer. You're absolutely doing nothing more than recklessly gambling the future of your company if you think you're going to run against the SDGs, because the SDGs are going to come and get you. And if you're in a business line that is contrary to the SDGs, you are not going to survive. Mark my words. So for a business point of view, it's straightforward. You want to prosper, you get in line with sustainable development, because that's the only kind of development we're going to have going forward. And I think for young people, of course, when companies see that if you want to hire the really outstanding young people, you better have something on offer more than we're fooling everybody and we're brazening it out, because they won't stay, they won't be interested. And so I think that this is just an absolute normal matter of corporate behavior and survival. There are a few holdouts. You know, ExxonMobil has been awfully big, awfully powerful, awfully tough, awfully brazen, but it's coming to an end. ExxonMobil, Chevron, you know, the Koch brothers, they own it privately, but we're going to tell them also that all their billions can't buy our democracy. This is really important for us right now, and it's important for the companies to understand, you want to make money in the future, that's fine. We're going to have a vibrant, dynamic economy, but you're going to make money the real way by producing value added, not by wrecking the planet and degrading natural capital.
Jeff?
And on the applications, just very, very quickly, and on IT. IT is a magnificent platform for health, for education, for outreach, for payments, for e-governance. I just went, when I voted in the New York primary, it was a paper ballot of the kind that might have been seen, frankly, in 1789. We can do better than that, because if we had online voting, everybody could vote. We wouldn't have the kind of tremendous distortions where many poor people don't vote because it's too hard, too many obstacles. So e-governance is a hugely important part of this as well. I want to say a word about the refugee crisis. In addition to the humane, decent, and internationally legal treatment of refugees who are fleeing for their lives, there's one other issue. Stop these crazy wars, because that's where these refugees are coming from. And the United States, I just want to say, has to stop these wars of regime change. Because every time the U.S. has the idea, well, we're just going to kick out another government, we end up with a refugee crisis, a humanitarian crisis, and an ongoing war. And these are wars of choice, Iraq or Syria or Libya recently. We don't need these wars of choice. We need peace of choice.